Pinnacle. It's good to see you guys today. If you're joining us online, I want to say welcome. Thank you for letting us into your home this morning to study the Bible. I'll try not to stutter too much this morning. If you're in here with us this morning and you've not been to Growth Track 4, that is starting concurrently with Equip, and that's going on down in room or suite 2. So Growth Track 4 is where you can learn, kind of take what you've been learning about God and about yourself and your personalities, your gifts and skills, and learn how to apply them to serve both here at Pinnacle and in the world around, in the outside of Pinnacle. And so if you have not been to Growth Track 4, we encourage you and invite you to go do that. It's a great time. You get to meet some new people as well. In here, we're going to start today. We're going to go into 1 Samuel chapter 9. I wanted to go through 9 and 10. I thought they really run together really well, and we will kind of dip into 10 a little bit, but it's just not going to happen to get through both chapters. But so if you open your Bibles there, I'll pray, and we'll get started this morning. Father, I thank you for this day. I thank you for the cooler weather that we have. God, I pray for more rain, for more moisture in our land. God, we need it. Pray for the fires in New Mexico and everywhere else that they're going on right now, that you protect people. And then just watch over those who are in the line of fire, God. We ask this morning that you be present with us as well, that we would hear your voice, your spirit speaking to us, that our hearts would be open, be fertile soil for the seed of your word to be planted and to take root. And God, I ask that you would just bless us this morning with your presence as we bless you with our thoughts and as we seek you out. And I pray that this morning that at some point, God, between now and noon and even later, from what is shared and done this morning by us in your name and by what you do through us, that salvation would come to someone's house this morning, God, that someone would come to know you, and we would have a new brother or sister to call our own. God, we ask this all in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. All right, so 1 Samuel chapter 9. We'll go ahead and read through the chapter 9 together. I like this chapter, and I'm just going to say this to lead off with. It would make a good beginning of a Netflix series because it's got a couple of twists and turns in it. You know, if you know the life of Saul as a king, there's quite a bit of drama here. So let's start reading. I'm reading from the New American Standard. It says, "Now there was a man of Benjamin whose name was Kish, the son of Abiel, the son of Zeror, the son of Bechorath, the son of Aphiah, the son of a Benjamite, a mighty man of valor. He had a son whose name was Saul, a choice and handsome man. And there was not a more handsome person than he among the sons of Israel. From his shoulders and up, he was taller than any of the people. Now, the donkeys of Kish, Saul's father, were lost. So Kish said to his son Saul, 'Take now with you one of the servants and arise, go and search for the donkeys.' He passed through the hill country of Ephraim, and he passed through the land of Shalisha, and they did not find them. And they passed through the land of Shaalim, and they were not there. Then he passed through the land of the Benjamites, but they did not find the donkeys. When they came to the land of Zuph, Saul said to his servant who was with him, 'Come, let us return, or else my father will cease to be concerned about the donkeys and will become anxious for us.' He said to him, 'Behold, now there is a man of God in this city, and the man is held in honor. And all that he says surely comes true. Now let us go there. Perhaps he can tell us about our journey on which we have set out.' Then Saul said to his servant, 'But behold, if we go, what shall we bring the man? For the bread is gone from our sack, and there is no present to bring the man of God. What do we have?' The servant answered Saul again and said, 'Behold, I have in my hand a fourth of a shekel of silver. I will give it to the man of God, and he will tell us our way.' Formerly in Israel, when a man went to inquire of God, he used to say, 'Come and let us go to the seer.' For he who is called a prophet now was formerly called a seer. Then Saul said to his servant, 'Well said. Come, let us go.' So they went to the city where the man of God was. Now, as they went up the slope to the city, they found young women going out to draw the water. And they said to them, 'Is there a seer here?' They answered them and said, 'He is. See, he is ahead of you. Hurry now, for he is coming to the city today, for the people have a sacrifice on the high place today. As soon as you enter the city, you'll find him before he goes up to the high place to eat. For the people will not eat until he comes, because he must bless the sacrifice. Afterward, those who are invited will eat. Now, therefore, go up and you will find him at once.' So they went up to the city. Now, here's where the twist comes in. Notice Samuel hasn't been mentioned this whole time. Like, this is just some guys looking for donkeys. And then here at the end of this paragraph, as they came into the city, behold, Samuel was coming out toward them to go up to the high place. So there's this, all of a sudden you realize who this guy they're looking for is. So now it's literary stuff. I get into it. It's like, oh, it's a surprise. So now a day before Saul's coming, the Lord had revealed this to Samuel, saying, About this time tomorrow I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin, and you shall anoint him to be prince over my people Israel, and he will deliver my people from the hand of the Philistines. For I have regarded my people, because their cry has come to me." When Samuel saw Saul, the Lord said to him, "Behold, the man of God whom I spoke, behold, the man of whom I spoke to you. This one shall rule over my people." Verse 18. Then Saul approached Samuel in the gate and said, "Please tell me where the seer's house is." Samuel answered Saul and said, "I am the seer. Go up before me to the high place, for you shall eat with me today, and in the morning I will let you go and will tell you all that is on your mind. As for your donkeys, which were lost 3 days ago, do not set your mind on them, for they have been found. And for whom is all that is desirable in Israel? Is it not for you and for all your father's household?" Saul replied, "Am I not a Benjamite, of the smallest of the tribes of Israel, and my family the least of all the families of the tribe of Benjamin? Why then do you speak to me this way?" Then Samuel took Saul and his servant, and he brought them into the hall and gave them a place at the head of those who were invited, who were about 30 men. Samuel said to the cook, "Bring the portion that I gave you, concerning which I said to you, set it aside." Then the cook took up the leg with what was on it and set it before Saul. And Samuel said, "Here is what has been reserved. Set it before you and eat, because it has been kept for you until the appointed time, since I said I have invited the people." So Saul ate with Samuel that day. When they came down from the high place into the city, Samuel spoke with Saul on the roof. And they arose early, and at daybreak Samuel called to Saul on the roof, saying, "Get up, I may send you." Get up, that I may send you away." So Saul arose, and both he and Samuel went out into the street. And as they were going down to the edge of the city, Samuel said to Saul, "Say to the servant that he might go ahead of us and pass on, but you remain standing now, that I may proclaim the word of God to you." There's a lot going on there, a lot of words there, but there's just to start off with, it's really kind of a cool story, written in a literary fashion. Right there at the beginning, we look at that first verse, and it says, let me go back to the right chapter. "Now there was a man of Benjamin whose name was Kish, the son of Abiel," and it goes on to give his lineage there. Now, does that sound familiar to you? It's been a few weeks, but where it says there was a man of Kish. If you go back to chapter 1, at the very beginning of this book, it starts off in the same way, with the same type of speaking here. And then there's a point to all this, I promise. Pages are sticking together. Right there in verse 1 of chapter 1, it says, "Now there was a certain man from Ramathaim Zophim." So see how they start the same? What this indicates to us literally is that a new story is beginning. So there's something new starting here. There once was a man from wherever, I'm not going to go into that, but here we saw that it started that way. And so here we see a shift in the story. We've learned about Samuel. We've seen about the sons of Eli and how all that went. And now we're getting to a place where there's a new change that's coming. All that Israel has been asking for is about to happen, which isn't necessarily a good thing, right? But we'll get to that in a minute. Now, so this is going to be the story of Saul that is kicking off. Saul, the first king of Israel. And Kurt talked last week about how Israel asked for a king. And if you'll remember, Kurt loved that chapter, by the way. And if you have any questions, he'd love to answer them again. But it's all about how, whether we put our trust in God or whether we put our trust in governments and leaders in that way. So through Saul, they're literally about to get exactly what they asked for. And that's the thing. So the first thing I want to point out about Saul that we read about him here when he's mentioned is that he is a choice and handsome man. Ladies, is this how you describe your husband? As a choice and handsome man? Maybe at one time. The thing is, I think when I read this, I think of, actually, I heard this on, for the first time in like years, I watched a late night show and they were talking about People is not doing the sexiest man of the year anymore. They've stopped doing that. So Paul Rudd is now the sexiest man forever, apparently, according to People. But if there had been People magazine in this day, Saul would have been on the cover, is the thing. Saul's the guy. Saul looks good. He stands out in a crowd, literally. And I'm not trying to make a joke there. He's literally, it says, from his shoulders up, he's taller than everybody else in Israel. So he's a big, tall guy. He's a good-looking guy. And when you think about what an immature world wants as a leader, this is what they're looking for. He's going to stand. You think, go back to high school with me just for a minute. I know it wasn't fun, but think about voting for a class president. Well, maybe it's fun for some of you, but think about voting for class president. If you're in a school like I was in, it was a popularity contest. You voted for who was the guy that was the homecoming king already or whatever. That's the guy who got it. It was just weird. And so that's kind of what the author of this story is pointing out, is that Saul is the guy that and people would notice. Now, he was from the tribe of Benjamin, the smallest tribe. He was from the smallest family in that tribe. And we know that God he looks at the heart, right? He looks and he raises up that which is cast aside by the world, and he wants to raise that up. And so there's kind of a mixed bag here with Saul. He is a part of the smallest tribe, the smallest family in the tribe, but he's also a super good-looking guy, very tall, would have been the quarterback and all that good stuff. So Saul is checking the boxes for this king that Israel asked for, because when they asked for a king, remember, it said, we want a king like the other nations. And so what they're doing is they're looking around and they want someone who's a warrior, a warlord, who looks like what the other nations have. And if we kind of think about that in our context, not to get political, but anytime a law seems to be getting challenged or changed, what does Hollywood usually respond with? If so-and-so gets elected, I'm moving to Canada, right? Or I'm moving to wherever, to Europe. Go. I mean, if that's where you want to live. But notice they don't go anywhere because they know that we've got a good thing going here. But the thing is, that's what Israel's doing. They're like, we want to be like someone else. We want to look like this other place. And so they're moving that way. And Saul, we see him being set up for that. Now, we know that from the entirety of Scripture that God does not look at the outward appearance. Actually, when David shows up, he's described as ruddy. Does anybody know what that word means? Red? Yeah, it's kind of red. So he's probably, and this is, if you've been at Pinnacle for a long time, you'll know who I'm talking about. But I always think of Nick Laughlin when I think of ruddy. Red hair, freckles, kind of a red complexion, and that's who I think of. I don't know, he fits the bill for me. So when God looked at, and when we look at Jesus, when the prophecies that talk about Jesus said he was nothing to look at, and so God looks at the heart. He's looking at people that have a heart for him, and he's not necessarily looking at the outward appearance. That doesn't mean if you're a good-looking person in this room, like me, that God's not going to use you. That's not the point. The point is that God's looking here, not here, okay? So now King Kish, Saul's father, he had some donkeys, and they had become lost. We read all this. So he sent Saul, and Saul took a servant to go find them, and they looked everywhere, all over where they thought they might have gone. And at some point, Saul's tired of looking for the donkeys. We've all been there where we're just like, the remote gets pushed down the cushions or something. You spend all day looking for the remote, and you're just, what, forget it, I'll read a book. That's kind of where Samuel's like, my dad's going to start worrying about us more than he's worried about the donkeys. So he mentions this to his servant. Now, I really want to, there's something cool about this, and we'll touch on it again later. But notice that Saul does not talk down to his servant. He actually listens to what his servant says. And I think that shows something about Saul's character that often we overlook because we get caught up in Saul later down the road. But Saul, he calls him his servant, and yet the servant says to him, hold on a minute, Saul, there's a guy there's supposed to be a man of God here. There's a person here that's a man of God, and so let's go check him out. He could tell us about our donkeys. And of course, Saul, again, is worried about paying the man because that's what would have happened. That's what he's thinking about. Again, we see this. There's a blend of religion. I don't know if he's thinking about the man of God as one of God's judges, or if he's thinking of a prophet, or if he's thinking of a non-Hebrew, a non-Israelite, a pagan. That's where I was looking for, a pagan-type seer, because we learn from that parenthetical that seers and prophets, they use the same word for both. So Saul, in his mind, may be thinking it's just a guy. It's a fortune teller or whatever. So he's thinking, how are we going to pay this guy? We're out of bread. We don't have anything. How are we going to pay him? And so the servant says to him, well, I've got a quarter of a shekel. I was thinking he's got a quarter in his pocket. It's like when I was young and you vacuumed your grandma's rug. He's like, here's your quarter. Go find the ice cream man. So he's got a quarter of a shekel. He says, we'll pay the guy with that. So I think that relationship between Saul and his servant is important to keep in the back of our minds. So Saul's family couldn't have been too bad, right? Let's get back to my notes. So what we meet here, Saul's a pretty good guy. Now, he also says we need to pay this guy, so they go and they find him. And so something else that's interesting here is that they randomly run into these women. Now, so when we get to that verse there, verse 11, it says, they went up the slope to the city. They found young women going out to draw water. And all these women, literally, are there for is to push the story along. They go up, I mean, do you think Saul and his servant could have found the seer without talking to the women? Yeah, but they show up. And so a lot of the commentators I read pointed out that what we see is that Saul is just going about daily life here. There is nothing significant or special about this story. Women went to the well to draw water every day, right? It's just like you driving to the grocery store to get bread and milk. There's nothing special about what's happening here. They really don't push the plot along. They're there. They show up, and Saul and his servant ask him, hey, is there a prophet? Is there a seer in town, a man of God? And they get the information from them. They learn that there is a man of God in town, that he showed up today because there's a sacrifice and a feast going on. So you're going to need to catch him before he goes up to the high place, but high places where worship would have happened. We hear that phrase together a lot in Old Testament, the high places. So you need to go get him before he goes up there because he has to bless it, and they won't eat until he gets there. So everybody's hungry, and they're waiting on him. It's like waiting on the preacher to show up to pray with a meal, right? So I thought that, man, am I showing my age? Do we wait for the preacher anymore? We usually just assign somebody now. But yeah, so that's the point. This is a very common occurrence is what's going on here. The story is pretty boring, isn't it? Guy lost some donkeys, going to look for donkey. Who wants to read this? I mean, seriously. If it wasn't in the Bible, would I read this story? It reads like something on a task test or a star test, right? You know, we're going to ask questions about it later. So, that's what it feels like. But it's a pretty boring story. Saul is trying to find his donkeys. He's going to run out of bread. He meets some women getting water. This could have been a trip to Dallas for us, right? To go pick up a car or something, or a trip to the grocery store. There's nothing significant or special is happening. It's not like he's going out to find the Holy Grail. It's not like he's trying to, seek out a prophetic voice for some big quest, He wants to know where he left his keys. His donkeys. But I wrote that joke down. I thought that one was good. So, what I want to point out here is that God comes to us in the ordinary. God's not, we're looking for a burning bush a lot of the times. We're looking for, some big light to shine on us, and God just comes to us in our day-to-day. But we've got to be paying attention. And so we're going to break off into groups for a little bit. We're going to discuss this. This is our first question. For us, think about your life. When does the ordinary turn into the sacred? Because that's what's going to happen with Saul here in a minute. When does the ordinary, the regular day-to-day life turn into the sacred? And what can we do to make ordinary moments sacred? So we're going to take a few minutes and just with the people around you discuss this. Mason will have the microphone. The microphone is so that those online can hear us. If you're online, please share your answers with the chat. I've got that pulled up, and we'll look at those. So take some time and discuss this question.
This world can be cold and bitter. Feels like we're in the dead of winter, waiting on something better. But am I really gonna hide forever? Over and over again, I hear your voice in my head. Let your light shine, let your light
right, do y'all need more time? Yes, you need more time. Okay, take a couple more minutes. Okay, let's move on. So, Mason has the microphone. I really want to hear what you have to say about this. When does the ordinary turn into the sacred, and what can we do to take ordinary moments and help them become sacred? So raise your hand so Mason can come to you. The microphone again is so that people online that are joining us can hear us. So, all right, Jada's got her hand up. Oh.
I was saying that whenever something happened, it's God ordained. You just feel it's God ordained, it's even the littlest, simplest thing. But you just know that God is the one that made it happen or ordained it, and then to give Him the glory, it would be making it sacred. To make sure He gets glory for it.
Thank you, Karen. So yeah, just responding in praise, and it is hard to describe that you know God, so you know when He's there, type of feeling. So, Jada?
So I was just saying, like, on my way to work, it's really early in the morning and I don't want to be up, but I ask God every morning on the way to work, can you just show me how to glorify you today, God? I want to be glory for you. And every day, when I'm out, I work in, one day a week I work in labor and delivery. I get to catch God's glory. I get to get that brand new baby. And I say, oh, this is just a regular moment. This has happened all over the world all day long. But today I get to be part of that glory of God and just asking God.
That's actually good, yeah. Yeah, for every woman, I think birth is, well, I don't think, birth is super special. But it does, it happens every day. But that's a really good illustration of there it is, God's of a sacred moment that happens daily. Wow, that was good. Anyone else? I didn't just say that because that was my wife either. So, what's that? No. No, she was at work actually when I was doing this. So. All right, Dan.
Pass. Pass. So, a lot of y'all know my history with recovery and alienating myself, trying to keep people away from who I am. I don't want people to get too close. I like people, but I don't want them to get too close because I don't want them to see the real me. So yesterday, we had a lunch. My son's graduating Monday. My beautiful sister is here from Denver, and her husband, and their little girl, and she's not with us right now. She's kind of got sick. Anyway, so we scheduled this lunch deal. We're busy. Julie and I are getting the house ready for company, and we're reservations, and we're doing the ordinary, the going through the day, and all of this. So yesterday we get to the restaurant, we all sit down, and we start talking. And we start talking about Caleb, my son, and him growing up. And it turned into this preciousness of sitting with these people in our lives and sharing and talking and just opening up. And it was so You know, for me especially, I guess, with my background, to actually be able to sit with people and talk to people and share personal stuff about my son and myself, I can actually talk to people now, is very, I appreciate it because of the fact that all of a sudden I'm part of somebody else's life and I'm sharing life with people instead of just driving to the store,
Right.
going to the, just going to get groceries, driving down the road. It's just, it was such a precious time to just sit and be in the presence of these people and share these moments. And so
That's good.
that's all I have to say about that.
Well, not much more needs to be said. Anybody else? Okay.
She's going to say being married to me.
No. I think it's having an attitude of gratitude also, and knowing that everything that you've got has come from Him, and recognizing that and sharing it with others and giving, I'm not necessarily non-believers, but people that are teetering or maybe not as, I don't know, in depth or recognize that it's God so much, but sharing that with them, and how can you not believe there's a God? It's like saying a prayer and inviting God into your life, what Jada was saying, and sharing it with other people. Like literally when you have a prayer answered within 5 or 10 minutes, how can you not believe? And sharing those type stories with other people, you
Right.
know?
That's good, yeah. Witness, testimony, very good. There's one over here, Mason. Trying to recall your name. I just met you 10 minutes ago. Jesse, okay. All right, it's nice to meet you guys. Thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing.
So you said an interesting word there, the mundaneness of life. So where I'm at in my life, where I grew up, the way I grew up and all like this, I like the idea, visited here with this group here a little bit. Anytime I go someplace, they were out searching for donkeys. Anytime you go someplace, you're searching for groceries. You're out looking for something.
Yeah.
Paul says in the letter to the Colossians, chapter 1, verse 15, he talks about the creation and how Jesus is the creation, is from the creation, made the creation. He is all like that. So anytime I go out into the mundaneness of life, I'm looking for that creation. I'm looking for the relationship, a prairie dog, a jackrabbit. Somebody makes me mad in traffic, or I make somebody mad in traffic, or whatever. You get to wonder. I wonder where their relationship is with God.
Yeah.
God made the jackrabbit. God made the prairie dog. So to me, God made the donkeys that they were looking for.
Right.
So, it's all about a relationship, and you can take that relationship with you anywhere you go, anytime you go.
That's good. Thank you, yeah. Kurt, did you have something? Okay. Oh, awesome. Look at that. Thanks, Jesse. Yeah, so, gosh, it seems like everybody's got, thank you guys for answering. There was one online Brenda wrote here. She says, when we remember that God is always present, we just have to call on Him. Nothing is too hard or too small or too ordinary for Him. And I think that's the thing is, it's easy to fall into everything, it's just ordinary. I just go to this every day. But the thing is that it's not. I think that I've been reading a devotional from N.T. Wright, and this particular section is about beauty and about art. And he's talking about how that's, as a creator, as God the creator, everything is endowed with this creativity and with this beauty. And when we enable ourselves to see that, we're engaging with the creator in that moment, with our Father. And whether it's a song that we sing, or a poem that you read, or a jackrabbit, or a prairie dog, or a sod poodle, or a baseball guy. There's beauty in baseball and in football and lots of mud in rugby. But, in all these things that, that that we come up with, that we're looking for God's engagement in it, for that relationship. That's really good. I was kind of convicted when I was thinking about this question up here. For the last 3 weeks, my mom has been struggling, trying to figure out what's wrong with her. She's had some medical issues. And so 3 Mondays in a row, I got phone calls. Monday's my day off, and I got phone calls to go to the doctor, the ER. So this was disrupting my life. And it's kind of like my flesh is just getting angry. Like, come on, not at her, but just at the frustration. Like, I've got things I got to get done. This is the only day I have to do it. But yet, if I was in the right frame of mind, which I'm working on, those moments become sacred. Because that's a moment I get to spend with my mom, who's 72, and I get to be with her in that time. And it usually turns out like that. We're good. We go to the doctor, the ER, whatever it is, and everything turns out all right. So every little moment can be made into an engagement with Christ, an engagement with God and the Spirit. We just have to be paying attention. We just really got to be paying attention. So Saul, one other thought I had, is earlier in this book we learned. Remember the cows, the 2 milk cows, the milch cows that when the Philistines wanted to return the Ark of the Covenant, we learned that they bellowed, they made noise all the way. They were dragging this cart with this ark in it because their calves were pinned up and they couldn't get to them. And God was leading these cows on that road. I wonder if God led these donkeys away too. If God was like, here, donkey, 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 and then just let it, and then poor Saul got Saul where he needed him. Or the other way to look at it is that God used the lost donkeys. Either way you want to do it. It's really cool because God was involved in all of it. So once Saul and his servant learn where to find this seer, remember, they don't know it's Samuel, right? They don't have any idea who this is. They head in the direction of the city. And that's one of the things I really like about this. I'm a big fan of old M. Night Shyamalan movies. He doesn't do this much anymore, but he made The Sixth Sense, and one of my favorites is the one with the aliens in it, Signs, right? So you're watching, I'm gonna spoil it, so spoiler alert, if you haven't watched it, it's been out for 10 years or more, so you've had time. But in the movie, there's a pastor, and his wife is pinned to a tree. I mean, it's a pretty graphic scene, and she's dying, and they call him, and he comes up, and the last words she says to him are, swing away, and she's talking to his brother. She says his brother's name, and it just wrecks him, and he bows out of the ministry for a while. And then there's an alien invasion, which you're like, what does this have to do with anything, right? And his daughter is like going nuts. She's leaving glasses of water all over the house just randomly. And he's like, why are these bottles of water? And his brother's living with him. He's a failed baseball player. He's trying to figure all this stuff out. And so the aliens finally get into his house, and they discover his brother-in-law takes a bat off of the wall, and they discover that, I'm getting chills thinking about it. He swings his bat to hit one of the aliens, and when he does, he hits one of those glasses of water, and the water hits the alien. Well, they're allergic to water. It's like acid on their skin. And so it starts hurting the alien, and they realize that it's not the baseball bat. And so all this water, and so they're the ones who discover the water is the kryptonite for the aliens, and that's how, and his faith returns because he realizes that swing away, the sign, the last thing his wife said to him, the water, the ordinary glasses of water sitting on the deal, all of this were signs pointing to their salvation, so to speak, from the aliens. And I love that because there's this twist. You think it's an alien movie. It was produced and made as an alien movie. You're thinking, oh, cool, Mel Brooks and aliens is going to be a great shoot 'em up. It wasn't. It was about faith. And it was about looking for God in the ordinary. And that's what happens here. We don't know that this is Samuel. We're reading this story. We're going, oh, this is so boring. Losing my mic. And then we get to this point, and then it goes, and it was Samuel. And it's like you can see the moment at the end when he takes his hood off, he turns around and goes, hello there, like Obi-Wan or something. And he's like, it's me. And it's all good. And so they realize it's Samuel. Now, they don't know who Samuel is, but we do. And so we're shocked, like, oh, it's Samuel's the man of God they were talking to. So, and then right after that, it goes into a flashback. It says to us that a day before, Samuel had been praying or whatever, and God had come to him and said, hey, I'm going to send a guy, a son of a Benjamite. He's going to come to you, and this is the guy that is going to be prince over my people. Now, notice it didn't say king. That's not a misprint. I went and checked. the other versions, and every commentator I read pointed this out, that the word prince there, it's on purpose. It's not, because prince is not a synonym for king, is it? You can just shake your heads and say, no, okay. We're all together. It's not a synonym for king. It actually holds a different meaning. The Hebrew word is, and I'm going to try to say this word right, nagid. And so what it means is it actually has a military connotation for it. It's like an officer, a military officer. It's a leader, but not a king. It's someone who, you think about how we have our commander-in-chief in America, it's the president. The president doesn't go fight wars, does he? But he sends people in his name or under his command. That's who Saul is. He's leading in God's name. That's what that word is referring to. It's really revelatory, because even as Israel is asking for a king like everybody else has, and they're going to get what they ask for, God is still king. He's not calling Saul king. He's calling him prince. He's going to be my, so to speak, my hands and my feet for Israel. He says he's going to deliver them from the Philistines, is what it says. And so he's a military commander, a leader on behalf of God for the Israelite people. So when Saul meets Samuel, he says, we're going to go up to this high place. I want you to go with me. There's a feast up there. And he tells them, hey, your donkeys have been found. Don't worry about them anymore. And then he says this really cryptic thing. And every time I read it, I was just like, I couldn't, it's really old. It feels like Shakespeare. For whom is all that is desirable in Israel? If I said that to you, for whom is all that is desirable in the U.S., would you know what I was saying? Yeah, I didn't either. I even went to the Message version. It was a little bit oversimplified. But he follows it up with, is it not for you and all your father's household? What he's saying is, he's looking at Saul and he's saying to him, everything that Israel is asking for, not what God is asking for, what God wants. Everything that Israel is asking for is in you. You're the one that Israel's been asking for. And that's why Saul turns around and goes, why are you talking to me like this? Because I come from the smallest family and the smallest tribe, and a person's a person no matter how small. I knew somebody would get that. But, I'm a nobody. And he was. I mean, he had a little bit of wealth, we know, because at least he knew his lineage, but he was a nobody. And he says this, I'm nothing. And I go back to what I said earlier. It's easy for us to look at Saul as king and to see as he loses his mind, as he loses grip with reality. I mean, he had mental health issues. He went nuts. But before that, he was a good guy. He was humble. There's humility in what he's saying. He's humble at this point. And he may have been good looking and tall, but he wasn't lording himself over other people. He spoke with his servant as a friend, not as someone beneath him. And as I was praying where to go with this, God took me out to a book. Actually, Kurt, I started reading Unoffendable. And so if you haven't read Unoffendable, it's funny, but it'll step all over your toes too. But it had a story about this family that called a realtor. It kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. They saw this listing for an inexpensive house. They called their realtor friend, and they met their realtor friend at the house. And they get there, and the grass has not been mowed in over a year. There's motorcycle parts all in the yard, and they're just, you know how when you show up at a house like that, you're like, ugh. I used to have to mow those yards. I worked for a guy that rented houses, and man, cleaning up those things is not fun. But they get to this house, and the realtor's going, wow, just look at this. Look at this. You could put a pathway right here. Just move this stuff out of the way. You get it, it'd be a beautiful place. And what they're thinking is whatever. So they get inside the house. They walk into what's the living room, and there's a quote-unquote fireplace, but there's there's motorcycles parked, pulled into the fireplace, right? And there's the carpet's stained and ripped up. It's torn. Every room was just terrible. And the realtor with every room said, well, you could paint this, you could pull this carpet here, you could stain this hardwood, and it's on and on and on. And so they ended up buying the house, and they remodeled the whole thing. They did the yard. They even followed the instructions of the realtor, put the pathway down. And when they were finished, it was their friend, so they invited them over for dinner. And then as they're eating, they said, hey, how did you know? When you looked at the shape this house was in, how did you know before? She said, and the response was, I could just see it. I could just see it. When God was looking at Saul, he saw it. He saw potential, I think, for the king that Israel needed. When God looks at you, you may feel like this old house, right? with the tall grass and motorcycle parts on your yard and a bunch of junk in the attic. But God sees the potential. God sees what he made you to be. And I think he saw that with Saul. And that leads us to our last question, which we don't have time for, but I'll just ask it out loud here. Do you think Saul could have been a good king? Do you agree with that? I mean, it's all speculation, so there's not a right or wrong answer here. But do you think Saul had the potential to be a good king? Potential, yes. We'll get into what happened as we move on. Here's the thing. God has made each of us, and he's created us as we are. He knew us, before we were born. He formed us in our mother's womb. He has I don't really like the word plan because sometimes that misleads us. God made you to be something. A child of the created, of the King, a brother of Jesus. You're an inheritance. You've got all these things, and the Spirit of God indwells you. You're a creator yourself. But we've got to learn to see it. We get caught up in I need to mow my yard, so to speak, right? My neighbor, he works from home. I mean, I kind of do too, but dude sells fish to restaurants. And so he gets to go out and mow his lawn whenever he wants to. And so every Friday or Saturday, he mows the yard, and mine's like 2 inches taller than his. And I'm like, dude, really? What I need to do is stop comparing my lawn to his because I don't have that luxury. You don't have the luxury that other people do with their lives as well. Work on you and God. And sometimes God says, I don't need you to work on yourself today. I need you to rest. Sometimes we're so busy going, I need to shape up, I need to ship up, I need to clean this up. And God's going, dude, take a break. Or do that. He just wants you to rest. That's what Sabbath was for, right? It was to rest. And so I just encourage you to listen and to ask him to show you, God, help me to see who I am. And help me walk in that. Because here's the thing is, you already are that person. That house already existed. You got good bones, as they say. Just walk into it. Walk in that. So we're gonna take communion together now. Move this out of the way. So I don't have any bread, but we'll walk through this anyway. So the night when Jesus was betrayed, he celebrated the Passover, which is thank you. He celebrated the Passover with his disciples, and I love this. I read also about the prodigal son, and it was pointed out to me that the prodigal son is actually a picture of the Exodus, the son, right? And the coming back to the Father is beautiful. And I want you to think about that because when he's sitting out at the Passover, they're celebrating the Exodus, right? And he's pointing this out, and so. Once they've celebrated this, he takes the bread and gives thanks. And he says, this is my body, which will be broken for you. Take and eat, every one of you. And then he took the cup and he blessed the cup. He gave thanks for this. And he said, this is my blood, which will be poured out for you for the forgiveness of sins. This is the blood that seals a new covenant that's based upon forgiveness and not upon the law. So take this and drink. And as often as you do this, remember. So I want to invite you, Roger and Leslie will be up front. I want to invite you to stand and to come, and they'll serve you communion. And as you come forward, let's do the confession together, the prayer of confession that we've been doing. We'll do this together. It'll be on the screen. But come in a spirit of confession. And as you're doing that, you're laying down the stuff that God is revealing to you, and you're asking God to help you see. So let's say this prayer together. Merciful God, we confess that we have not loved you with our whole heart. We have failed to be an obedient church. We have not done your will. We have broken your law. We have rebelled against your love. And we have not loved our neighbors, and we have not heard the cry of the needy. Forgive us, we pray. All right, you guys come forward. let's wrap up in prayer, and then we'll just kind of fellowship until 10:45. Father, we thank you for this day. Thank you for this story of song. God, thank you that we all have, God, you made us. We're not without a future and without potential. And Father, I pray that we would hear from you who we are and who we should walk as. God, I ask that the Spirit of God, that the Holy Spirit would live within us, that we would look to Jesus, and that as we follow him, that his characteristics, the traits that he had, that exemplify who you are, God, that they would shine forth in how we encounter people moment by moment in our lives, even in those seemingly banal times. And God, that we would be those who would be unoffendable, God, that we would be people who are forever making the moments we encounter sacred, God, so that others can see you. God, I ask this in the name of your Son, Jesus, and for your glory. Amen. All right, we'll catch you in the atrium.